our profession, and we speak as the voice of our land. So when the drums of creativity sound and the gongs clang, when vegetations thrive and the people rise, high above the voice of doubt, the voice of despair, and the voice of impossibility, we trust that deep within, the people know to respond to a call of duty, to society and country, the voice of equality and transformation, the voice of our assassin, the voice of our land. Hear it, hit to it, walk with it. Assassin Radio 99.5, the voice of our land.
Good morning from Kempinski Hotel. Thanks to Nanea and the rest of the team in the studio. So here we are at the Ghana Economic Forum, the 10th edition. What's of something that promises to be, it says in the BNFT this morning, the country's most anticipated and biggest economic forum. The Ghana Economic Forum starting today. The theme for this year is all about the youth. The year's edition focusing on the youth and will be held under the theme Strengthening Homegrown Policies to Underpin the National Digitization Drive and Shared Financial Prosperity. We're going to be speaking to a few people this morning, and we're fortunate enough to be able to start the ball rolling with Mr. Kenneth Thompson. He's the CEO of Dalex Finance, fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales. And, he's the focus for Dalex, of course, is the whole area of digitization generally. So we get into some of that detail and get a sense from him of what that means in today's Ghana. And also we've got Gloria Addison. She just wants to be called a financial analyst today. So we'll leave it at that for now. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining me before the conference gets underway and for being here. I want to ask you very quickly, both of you, when these conferences are happening, there's a lot of them. Sometimes you're thinking, okay, so what's the point? So I always want to know from everybody, what's the point? Gloria, what's the point of this kind of event?
Thank you, Kojo.
Kojo, yeah.
I think such conferences help government to know what is actually happening on the ground, and it also helps them to formulate policies so that the country can move forward. Out of such conferences, things come up which maybe the government may not know, but out of that, they will know. Then they will know how to direct their policies.
Right. Okay. So this, for you, it's simply a case of helping the government to get a better direction.
Yeah.
Right. Mr. Thompson.
The greatest influences of our life is government, politics, of course, government say politics, and business. So it's important that there's a constant dialogue between business and government to make sure that there are the right policies and laws to promote economic development. And unless that happens, we're going to have very little happening. As business people, we risk capital. As government, they control resources, and we have a shared interest. But of course, we've got to make sure that we're speaking with them all the time to ensure that we're moving in the right direction. And when we come to the substantive matter of the discussion, I'll tell you the things that government. So it's very critical that the private sector and government is talking all the time. And the Ghana Economic Forum has provided that platform for over 10 years. And that's critical. It's very, it's absolutely essential that we're talking all the time. Government, private sector, we should be talking all the time. And this is one of great platforms for doing that and ensuring that the debate keeps going, the discussion is still warm, because it needs to be warm all the time.
And the youth. Youth have become the focus, and digitization, a word that a lot of people don't even still understand, is a thrust. Gloria, impact youth, why? Why do you think the youth should be so targeted?
The youth should be targeted because they are looking at the population. You realize that they have the higher margin, and when you have a youth which is not working, a youth that is idle, it calls for a lot of troubles within the society. So when the youth are involved and they are targeted and jobs are created for them, you realize that the nation will move forward. And businesses can only dialogue with government. Government alone cannot create employment, and it takes the private sector to create. So such dialogues involving private sector help the government to formulate the right policies so that the youth can be absorbed. Almost every year, 200,000 students come out from the university. And if there is no job for them, then where are we heading to? So the private sector and government coming together will help the youth so that we absorb them for the nation to move forward.
Right. Okay. So your thoughts on that? Youth focus.
My thoughts on youth focus. First, I want to go back take one step back.
Right.
I'd like to congratulate the finance minister. This morning, the headline of the front page BNFT says the government payroll is full, which is a truism. It's been in full for some time. And a lot is being made of the Ghana Cares program. This 100 billion CD project that the government is pursuing. But what is very clear, and it's been clear for some time, is that because as a country we are broke, the ability to borrow to fund that program is challenged. And it is, as to how we got there and where we got there and all those issues, really, that's of no interest to me. But the ability to borrow to fund these things, which will fund youth development, job creation, is challenged. But the private sector has the capacity to borrow over $15 billion, the private sector, to fund development. So for me, the whole idea is to release the private sector to fund economic development. We need to release the private sector to fund economic development. I'll tell you how. As a country, our consumer debt to GDP is 19%, around 19%. That is even lower than Togo. It's low, yes, because it's lower than Ivory Coast, it's lower than the Gambia. And in South Africa, that ratio is over 100%. So if you take Ghana's GDP of approximately 60 billion, even if that increases by 20%, that's 20%, that's $12 billion. And so the question is that, how do we release the private sector to borrow and fund that development? Because the government can't do it. As a company, we don't fund SMEs. We don't fund SMEs, and we fund government sector employees. We fund government sector employees because we know them, we know where they are, we can't find them, and it's difficult for them to run away. But in the private sector, we can't fund the vast majority of people because we don't know them. They can run away, we can't find them. So if we create a system which allows us to be able to know the people, to find them, to make sure they pay, I can assure you there'll be an explosion of credit in this country, and we will borrow to fund development. How do we do that? I mean, we have embarked on a digitization drive with this national identity card, and we need to intensify it and link it to, you've got to link it to the DVLA, link it to SNET, link it to a bank account, link it to land registry, and as the private sector, we will pay for it. We don't have a problem paying for it. And if we're able to do this, I can assure you, we will borrow money and put in the economy. In addition to that, make the commercial court system work. Make the lawyers and the judges rich. Make them rich. Let them sit day and night, get the cases through. And this issue will be resolved because the government has no capacity to borrow, which we all know. And it's not as if it happened yesterday. It's been going on for a long time. And when you are spending over 90% of your income on two items, you are broke.
Yes.
So relieve the private sector to fund economic development.
Okay.
Release the private sector to fund economic development. And that's all they have to do. And we'll pay for it. And in any case, when it comes to interconnectivity, let the government control it, because we don't want any private sector company to hold us to ransom.
Mr. Thompson is not a dreamer. He's just very confident. Gloria, before there's some substantive issues I need to ask, but based on his confidence, his level of confidence in the private sector, is the private sector creative enough to be as good as Mr. Thompson says they can be?
Oh, yes. As Mr. Thompson was saying, like when you look at the banks, the universal banks, it takes about 70% of the ecosystem of the banking sector.
Right.
But they don't lend to the private, the SMEs, because they cannot be located, as they said. So I think with this digitization things going on, when the people can be traced, now it's like they are linking SNIT, Ghana card, everything, and now when you go around, you can see that houses are being given proper digital numbers. If the people can be traced, then I think the private sector, which is the financing ecosystem, can help the government out. When you look at this Obatampa project, it's 100 billion Ghana cedis, and the government is only going to sponsor 40 billion out of the 100 billion, and it's the private sector who is supposed to supply that 60 billion. So I know that, and for instance, both local and international, they are all suffering because of this pandemic,
right?
And they are, because the effect of the pandemic on businesses. So the private sector, which is supposed to supply this 60%, that private sector is also struggling. They also need help to recover. And the foreign companies or the foreign partners who also come and help, they are also in the same crisis.
The same boat, yeah.
So this project, unless people are confident, the banks or the financial institutions are confident that when we give out money, people will get our money back, then they can go and borrow, because having almost 80% debt to GDP is serious, which the IMF has even questioned the nation on how that we should manage that crisis. So government cannot borrow again, and it's the private sector which will borrow. But the private sector will not borrow and give to somebody for the person to chop free. No. He wants his money back. Yeah. He has to pay back. His business must go on. So I think this digitization will help so that they will have confidence with them. And the Ghanaian attitude in loan repayment too is another aspect.
You talked about COVID, so I'm going to stick with you for a minute on COVID. How bad was COVID, the impact of COVID on this country? How seriously? Let's say if you had to calculate, how many years did it set us back?
COVID hits us as a nation, or let's take the whole world. You see, it came as a shock because we're not prepared for it. And when we are not prepared for something and it hits you, you lose your balance. You see, and like, I was surprised that even people who were working the 3 weeks lockdown, people say we are hungry, we had this, not even government, individuals. So you realize that at a point now, government has to fund even giving people food to eat, hot meal to eat, because people cannot get money. And majority of the people, they work from their daily
hand to mouth.
Yeah. So when they go, whatever they get, they consume. You see, and this is one thing that after COVID, one thing I believe, one policy that the country must look at is financial literacy among the people. We have certain basic financial things that, as every individual, whether individual, business, or whatever it is, you must have, like having an emergency fund, having a budget and other things. So if like majority of people had emergency funds and this COVID lockdown 3 weeks, do you think the cry and the noise that we had?
So you're talking about proper fiscal management,
yes,
even at a very basic micro
and
level.
Education, proper financial education for all.
Right.
It should be inculcated so that the people, even people who takes loan and they are not paying because they don't know. They think, oh, I've gotten free money. You'll be surprised people go for loans and from there they go and marry with the money. You see, but when they get that proper financial literacy, they will know that, yes, I have to manage my finances well.
Okay.
So it hit us bad because we're not prepared for it.
Okay.
And so we were taken off gear. And everybody, it was like businesses, nations were all falling.
Right. Okay. Mr. Thompson, so here we are, recovery, we're in recovery more or less. COVID is not over, but we're certainly on the other side. Government took some pretty serious risks with everybody's money. Some might say, oh, great interventions, wonderful interventions, but some I might also say, but there's got to be an accounting because it's our money. So it doesn't matter what the program is, Ghana Cares, whatever it is, where's the accounting? Where's the prudent use of our resources? Why would I be giving money through NBSSI or anything else to people just because they're going to use it to pay school fees?
Okay, first let me say the things I talk about, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've been in this business of giving money for over 15 years. I mean, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you followed me, these are things I've spoken about since forever. COVID was an unusual event. It's like a war. And when you have a war, you borrow to fund the war effort, and then when you finish, you pay. So I don't think that, and really with hindsight, everybody's wise. In an emergency, you take certain decisions. So I don't think it's fair of me to come and start now say that they should have done certain things certain way. I mean, I have my opinion on how certain things were done, but it's okay, let's move forward. What I know is that the government has no capacity to borrow. That's the bottom line. And we've got to release the private sector to fund economic development.
How's it going to do that? I'm curious.
I told you.
Yeah, no, but
create an incentive for people to pay back.
Speak to what Gloria said, though, about this whole issue of education.
Forget about education. Education is part of it. Create an incentive for people to pay back their money. And I'll give you an example. You know, when I went in England in the 80s, I don't have time for this. Early 80s, you wake up in the morning, you go shopping. And by the time you get to the third shop, somebody gives you a store card, you buy, come home and throw it away. Try that now in UK. They'll lock you down. And that is the incentive to release the private sector to borrow to fund economic development. And I'm telling you that if there's this integration between the ID card, SNIT, registry, land registry, payroll, bank, I personally would sell my house, the one house that I have, and fund debt, because I know the people who take the money cannot run away. That's a basic principle.
Right. But before you completely dismiss the issue of education, you said it's important.
No,
but you see, the problem is, I'm not just talking about the basic education that says I'm learning how to run my books. The education that speaks to honesty of the Ghanaian borrower.
Ghanaians are not dishonest. And I really hate that. We are like any other human being. Who says Ghanaians are dishonest? We're not dishonest. If you create a set of circumstances and environment for people to be dishonest, they will be dishonest. I can assure you, to get people to pay back, it's not to preach the virtues of honesty. It's to preach the virtues that if you don't pay, you go down.
Okay.
Ghanaians are not dishonest. Ghanaians are not lazy. Ghanaians are not dishonest. Ghanaians, yes, maybe a lot of us don't speak English, but we're not stupid. Right. Let's not go down that road.
Okay.
Let's create, if you want to change behavior, provide incentives.
Right.
So let's not go down that road.
Gloria, cashless.
The education is important. It's fantastic. But it's all part of the package that leads to a certain objective.
Yeah.
But let's not pretend that, people in Norway are paying back because they are honest. If you don't pay back, you are shut down. Simple. If you go to the US, if you don't file your taxes by a certain date, they shut you down.
So it's about creating the society where you can't get away with stuff.
That is it. Any economist will tell you that to change behavior, provide incentives. The incentives now provide encourages people to be dishonest. It's okay, we're human beings. But if you want the private sector to fund economic development, then provide incentives for people to pay back. And so digitization, link everything up, we will pay for it. We'll shut you down.
We'll come back. There's two things I need to touch base with you about on digitization, because I know you love the whole idea. I think everybody does, but it comes with a lot of challenges as well. So let's speak about some of those challenges. I mean, again, you can be illiterate and still do Momo, so I'm not talking about that. But there's a lot that requires a certain amount of literacy. And there's a lot of theft or losses that are never recorded through this same cashless society that we want to create. What are we going to have to do better to safeguard what little money is going through those systems?
You know, concerning this digitization, one major challenge is network, where people want to log on or use all this run on internet, and if the internet supply or availability is not stable, then people will not succumb to it. Though it's good, and digitization is the way forward, where people can be traced. People knows that when I take loan, they can trace me, so I'll pay. But where the people cannot have access to internet, which the digitization drives on, it will be difficult for it to succeed.
Right.
Even in Accra here, sometimes when you want to use this mobile money,
challenges.
Last Friday, I have to transfer money, and almost the whole day, when I have money on my phone and I can't transfer, I have to call somebody to go and give the money to the person, because the person, it was an emergency, but I have money.
Right. So are we ready? Are we ready for, I mean, it's a great drive. Is the country ready for it? Can it take it on board and work with it so that we succeed?
The government should take a critical look at the internet or the mobile facility.
You consider that to be the big challenge?
Yes, so that if it's there, everything will be all right. Like Mr. Thompson said, if the internet is not working and you want to get somebody's information, you go to your phone, you go to your PC, whatever it is, and you cannot get access.
Then the whole, it was pointless.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you have the access, you key in the person's Ghana card number, and you can have all the information at your fingertips. Then the private sector will borrow, because they know that
everything is available.
Everything is at the fingertips. The strike of the phone or the whatever it is, they are getting the information. They can track the person. You see, so the government,
the system has got to be enough.
The system must look critically at the internet connectivity of the nation, and it's very important.
Right.
So that when we get that, and everything will just follow. And we should try. Sometimes people make so much noise. For instance, this SIM registration, you're talking about Ghana card. People say other cards, but I believe the Ghana card is the right thing. So it's being linked to your TIN number. It's being linked to your SNIT. It's being linked to your everything. Then it means when I'm looking for you,
right,
I can get you. But when you use so many cards, then it means tracing will be difficult.
Okay.
So those in charge of Ghana Card should also make sure that every citizen, it's the responsibility of Ghana, the nation, to make sure that every citizen gets the card at all costs.
Right. Okay. If you're just joining us, I'm talking to, at the moment, this is Sasi, by the way, with Kempinski Hotel, just ahead of the start of the Ghana Economic Forum, 10th edition, speaking to Mr. Thompson. He's the CEO of Daylex Finance, and also to Madam Addison, she's a financial analyst. You had the question I was asking Mr. Thompson, and the thing, is it going to work? Ms. Addison, she's ear to the ground. She says one of the big challenges right now is the fact that the support systems are not as as not operating as well as they should do. I mean, the background, we're talking about connectivity, we're talking about electricity. There's too many things that can make everybody's bid for digitization to fail.
Saying that will it work is the wrong question. Greatness, prosperity has been achieved by people with dreams and with great ambitions. And if it's too easy, we're doing the wrong thing. If it's easy, that's what we're doing. What we know is that we want to create an incentive that will release the private sector to fund economic development. And the government has no capacity to borrow. So we've got to get on that road. There'll be challenges, but we've got to do it. For me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, really, I don't sit in my office and say I want to do something, but there'll be challenges. I sit in my office and say, this is what I want to achieve, and how am I going to do it? And of course, when you set about on any project, you can see the end point. You go for your meetings, you have your strategy. We'll come out of Ghana Economic Forum, and everybody's charged and say, yes, let's do it, let's go. But there are going to be ups and downs. That is normal. There'll be good days and the bad days, but we must keep the objective in sight. And that's what we have to do. We're broke, there's no question about that. The private sector can fund economic development, but we need to be able to release them by providing incentives for people to pay back their loans. That's it. And we'll pay for it. We don't have a problem. The private sector will pay for it.
Private sector will pay for it. I love the confidence.
I've been doing this thing. I know what I'm talking about. I've been talking about these things for years. The private sector, we will pay for it. We'll pay for it. What's the problem? Okay. I mean, I'll go and borrow on my own account. I'll go and borrow $20 million. I mean, financial institutions, our balance sheets will more than triple in 5 years. We will pay for it.
Going forward, development, and the importance of digitization. Let's say we get over all the humps. If you had to assess the importance, I don't know, is a percentage even? How important is digitization? Getting it right, how important is that to our development, our ability to develop?
It's very, very important.
As a percentage, what would you say?
Pardon?
How much could it possibly improve the way we're doing things?
I think we have done better. We are doing well. Let me use that. We are doing well. As Mr. Thompson said, every strategy, every policy has its own ups and downs. And as we are going, you look at the challenges, then you change the strategy because you know what you want to get. So though it's gradual something, now you can see that you can't register a business without a TIN number.
Right.
So people are forced to have a TIN number. So you see, it's
going to improve our business.
It's going to improve our business.
Development-wise.
People now, you can't go to bank or you can't borrow even with this NBSSI, the cap thing.
Right.
You can't borrow without a business certificate or something. So you realize that gradually we are moving, and when we continue, as we are going, we address the problems and the challenges, change strategies, we'll get there. Those outside, now we see that they are now at their peak. They also started somewhere. So I believe that we are on course and we are doing well.
Right.
And we'll get there.
Right.
When we change strategies as we meet challenges.
Okay. Look, you've got an international market that you have to talk to all the time. You've got international businesses that you have to, Ghana I'm talking about, has to talk to all the time. How critical is that we get our own digitization sorted out pretty quickly, because of the fact that the rest of the world is a few years ahead of us when it comes to being interconnected, working with cards, working with systems, working with electronic data and e-commerce and those things. How far are we behind, and how critical is it for us to do catch up?
When it comes to this whole digitization drive, I think that we're on the road. We could be much further up the road. For me, the critical part is that it will allow us, as a country, to fund indigenous business. And I go back to the same point, which is that, if we want true development, we have to make indigenous businesses stronger. So we allow us to fund indigenous businesses. It's a process. There'll be challenges. We can't give up. The rest of the world probably is ahead, but it's not a problem. You know, it's about the knowledge economy.
Are we losing money because we're not as advanced as we should be?
Well, remember that, you know, there have been, I don't know how old are you, but there was, when I was much younger, some governments came to power and withdrew 50 cedi notes from the system.
Yeah, no, remember?
Yes.
I remember those guys.
And those that had 50 cedi notes lost a lot of money.
Right.
Recently, there's been a financial crisis where people have lost money. So, quite apart from the fact that we haven't pushed a digitization agenda until recently, we also need to be able to build more confidence in the financial system. But somebody has to, and that's where we need government. And I say the private sector, if somebody says that this is what we're going to do, and push to get there, and that's how it's going to happen. But to say that, you know, people don't. Everybody's afraid of change. Everybody's afraid of change.
But it's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, change
is going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Right.
And somebody has to make sure that change happens.
Right.
You know, if you sit and you're waiting for, you know, there are three things about the change. You can either watch it happen, or change can pass you by, or you can make change happen. The best spot to be in is to make change happen. And we've got to make change happen, because that's the way forward. The government has no capacity to borrow. Now, it's not this government. Sarah, you guys don't have the capacity to borrow. And the private sector that can fund economic development, and we've got to release the private sector.
Does the government understand this? I mean, you say it. Does the government agree with you?
If the Minister of Finance comes this morning and says there's no room on the national payroll, you say, of course they understand it. We all went to the same schools, we talk the same language,
so they get it.
Of course, everybody gets it. But you know, we have to dialogue with them, and we have to work together to achieve a certain objective. It's not going to happen because Ken Thompson sat in his office and said this is going to happen. Ken Thompson needs to come on Assassin and talk about it, and try and push the agenda, and talk to the politicians, talk to other business people, and advocate for what is right. Right. It's a collective thing. So I don't. If it'll be just stupid to, excuse my word, to think that you know, we know something that they don't know.
Right. You're on the same page.
We're on
anyway.
the same page. That's
okay.
It.
I'm going to let you go. But before I let you go, there's one thing I'm going to ask both of you. I'll start with you, Madam Gloria. What is the one thing that you think you want to get out of this forum before you leave here? What do you want to have heard or made, or actually from government mainly, but what do you want to have heard? One thing that you say this forum must deliver for you, what would that be?
One thing that I would be happy to out of this forum is the private sector should be given the capacity to help. You see, the enabling environment should be created for the private sector to help the government, so that this Obatampa care, whatever it is, when you look at the whole program, when you read through, the idea is good, but the funding, and 60% of the funding must come from is coming from the private sector. So the enabling environment should be created so that the private sector will be able to fund, to help to fund, so that
be brave enough to go and get borrow money.
And the private sector is saying they are already brave, but only that they want to be sure that they can get their money back.
Right.
So that we can have the benefits of the program.
Right. Okay.
Where more jobs will be created for the youth, where transformation will come, so that the economy will bounce back. Now we are stabilized a little, so we will see the economy,
right,
how we want it to be, so that all of us as a nation will be happy, and the micro, those on the ground, will also experience whatever gains that we are making. Right. We will have a better nation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Your final word as well. I mean, what do you want to get from here? Like we started, I asked you, and I now want to know, what do you want to get from here? Do you want declarations from this forum, like along the lines of what Madam Gloria is saying? That listen, but clear ideas, you know.
Let's this Ghana Economic Forum is a part of the process. So it's part of the process. Some declarations we have made, which is nice, but for me, it's the execution that matters. Two things are important to me. First, a recommitment to the digital agenda is very critical to me, and also a promise that the private sector is going to be released to fund economic development. That's all it is, and it's part of the process. And we are going to work with government to achieve these two.
What's the evidence that the private sector has been released to do it? What do you need to see?
What do I want to see? Ghana card setup, linked to GRA, linked to DVLA, linked to land registry, linked to SNIT, and the private sector given access to it and will pay for it. Linked to the credit reference bureaus, will pay for it.
I'm surprised none of you is talking about getting a decent bank interest rates.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there. Let's not go there, because the governor himself said that the bank rates are expensive because domestic borrowing is high. It's fine. But if we, private sector, take on the slack of borrowing, that means the government borrows less, and that means interest rates go down.
So either way, we'll get to where
exactly.
Okay.
So release the private sector to fund economic development. Just release the private sector to fund economic development, and that's all we need.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being here, and have a great conference, and have a great have great discussions today. Kenneth Thompson is the CEO of Dalex Finance and a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, and very, very for private sector, the engine of growth. I love it. So, and also he was with Gloria Addison, as a financial analyst. And she's more about, if you get the basics right, a lot of stuff will fall into place. So the two of you, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Have a good session.
You too, sir.
We shall see you around.
All right. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, too.
Cheers.
All right. So Asasi Radio 99.5, broadcasting from Kempinski Live. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk some more.
Of our Asasi, the voice of our land. Hear it, heed to it, walk with it. Asasi Radio 99.5, the voice of our land. Pan-African is who we are. Accuracy is how we represent. Integrity is what we believe in. Constructive journalism is the tone of our profession. And we speak as the voice of our land. So when the drums of creativity sound and the gongs clang, when vegetations thrive and the people rise, high above the voice of doubt, the voice of despair, and the voice of impossibility, we trust that deep within, the people know to respond to a call of duty, to society and country, the voice of equality and transformation, the voice of our Asasi, the voice of our land. Hear it, heed to it, walk with it. Asasi Radio 99.5, the voice of our land. Pan-African is who we are. Accuracy is how we represent. Integrity is what we believe in. Constructive journalism is the tone of our profession. And we speak as the voice of our land. So when the drums of creativity sound and the gongs clang, when vegetations thrive and the people rise, high above the voice of doubt, the voice of despair, and the voice of impossibility, we trust that deep within, the people know to respond to a call of duty, to society and country, the voice of equality and transformation, the voice of our Asasi, the voice of our land. Hear it, heed to it, walk with it. Asasi Radio 99.5, the voice of our land. Pan-African is who we are. Accuracy is how we represent. Integrity is what we believe in. Constructive journalism is the tone of our profession. And we speak as the voice of our land. So when the drums of creativity sound and the gongs clang, when vegetations thrive and the people rise, high above the voice of doubt, the voice of despair, and the voice of impossibility, we trust that deep within, the people know to respond to a call of duty, to society and country, the voice of equality and transformation, the voice of our assassin, the voice of our land. Hear it, heed to it, walk with it. Assassin Radio 99.5, the voice of our land. Pan-African is who we are. Accuracy is how we represent. Integrity is what we believe in. Constructive journalism is the tone of our profession. And we speak as the voice of our land. So when the drums of creativity sound and the gongs clang, when vegetations thrive and the people rise, high above the voice of doubt, the voice of despair, and the voice of impossibility, we trust that deep within, the people know to respond to a call of duty, to society and country, the voice of equality and transformation, the voice of our assassin, the voice of our land. Hear it, heed to it, walk with it. Assassin Radio 99.5, the voice of our land. Land.
Economic Forum, and we're talking to some of the participants here, some people who are going to speak to the issues here, and others who are just coming to find out what's going on and contribute their quota to the discussions. We have the chance now to speak to Andy. Let me get this right. It's Andy Akoto Sapong. Is that right, Andy? Andy Akoto. Okay, right. Andy Akoto is a senior partner, or at KPMG, and Abnamwa is the Deputy Managing Director of the Ghana Stock Exchange. Right. Thank you so much. Sorry, was that right?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for being here, and I appreciate your time before the event gets started. And I just want to find out from both of you, in your own words, what is this kind of forum, this kind of conference? For you, what's the purpose?
Well, I know the Ghana Economic Forum to be a platform to dialogue on very important matters, to shape policy for the benefit of the economy. And therefore, over the years, KPMG has sought to partner with the Business Financial Times and other stakeholders to address very important topics.
Right.
And I believe there's a lot of focus on digitalization for this year's conference, and rightly so, not least of which is the global pandemic, which has kind of reinforced the need to actually bring some transformation in everything that we do to be able to reinforce our business models and make the Ghanaian economy more competitive. So we are proud to be associated with it, and we hope that the outcomes of the conversations would also feed into policy initiatives for the benefit of the economy. Thank you.
Right. Abna, from where you sit and the stock exchange, what do you think?
We think this is a fantastic gathering. We've been and attended a few of these previously, but this year's was extremely interesting and poignant to us in the sense that digitization is critical. We at the Ghana Stock Exchange have digitized our processes as far back as 1998. And during the pandemic, we were able to trade remotely. No one had to go to the office. And we realized the import of these systems and how it has impacted our ability to operate. But importantly also is that the pandemic has realized and brought to fore the need to raise capital and provide capital to support the recovery that is ahead of us. It is exactly this important stake where the Ghana Stock Exchange facilitates the raising of long-term patient capital for SMEs, for large corporates, as well as provide an investment, a safe, regulated investment platform for investors to provide these long-term patient capital. And that is why we're here today supporting the BNFT for this edition of the
Patient
Forum.
capital. Whilst we may want to have that kind of patient investment, you have the challenge also of trying to work with a little bit of money and get some stuff done. Development agenda, development agenda, development agenda. How do you marry the two?
That's the exact point. When you're on the move, it means that you need to put in place structures that have a very long-term benefit. And so for things like that, you need what we call patient capital, equity capital, long-term debt capital. You don't need money that you have to pay back tomorrow, because the investments we need to put in factories, in infrastructure, these are 20-year, 30-year, 50-year, 100-year companies. We need investors that have that time horizon, not something you take and pay back next month, to enable you to do that investment. And this is what we facilitate at the Stock Exchange.
Sokoto, you see the companies, you've seen companies come and go, and had to deal sometimes saving them from themselves. I mean, does Ghana have that, or is Ghana developing that habit of building sustainable enterprises? Are we getting there? Are you seeing that in your work now?
I believe we've made some strides in the past, but there's obviously a lot more to do. In fact, about 4 years ago or so, KPMG conducted a survey on corporate governance practices, which we believe is the bedrock of sustainable enterprises. across Africa. And out of 15 countries sampled, unfortunately, Ghana came as one of the lowest ranked. In fact, we were ranked 12 out of 15. Okay, and this was on the back of examining our regulations, our statutes, our business codes, etc., to inform the willingness of businesses to embrace global standards in corporate governance practices. And you can talk about the preparedness of the board to embrace ethical practices in their governance system, succession planning. You can talk about strategic planning. A number of these might sound like cliches, but in truth, there is a need to actually have some rules of compliance around this, so that it's not a question of leaving it for businesses to do it at their own, if you like, volition.
Right.
But actually to have them actually try and implement some of these governance standards.
Right.
That will ensure sustainable enterprises.
Right.
I mean, it's very sad when in our current dispensation, certain enterprises die when their owners, move on. And that shouldn't be. And so we have been engaging a number of SMEs, a number of business captains,
Right.
and I've actually helped them strengthen their systems of control, whilst also enjoining them to embrace global governance practices.
Right.
Putting in place board charters, putting in place strategic plans and effective ethical systems and cultures across the organization, so that we can be competitive and be able to play in the international arena. And if you want an indicator of how sustainable that Ghanaian businesses are going to be, you have to look around and see the Ghanaian businesses that are playing in other markets.
Right.
Most indigenous homegrown businesses, are still playing within our national borders. But what do we see in the reverse? We have companies from Southern Africa, we have businesses from even Nigeria, West Africa, etc., all playing in our market. What is the reverse? And those are questions that we need to continue to interrogate to see how we can strengthen the hand of our indigenous businesses to also be competitive and play in other markets. That's the only way we can build
Creating
that
better habits.
Sorry?
Creating better habits.
Absolutely.
But, okay, here you are. You're in the same boat to a certain extent. You only get on the stock exchange something worthy. A business that actually makes sense. Obviously not every business is going to decide it wants to give out shares. But the idea of business generally, and today, the businesses, and we're talking about digitalization, he talked about succession planning and all of those kinds of things. Do you have a role to play in making sure that that gets done, that the digitization becomes habit, not, this is new, but more or less, and how beneficial is that? How is it beneficial is it going to be when we are properly digitized?
Yes, absolutely. The other key point of coming to raise public capital is the corporate governance discipline that companies have to put in place. When you've taken public capital, be it equity, and we don't just raise shares, you can't just sell shares.
Right.
We also have a fixed income market for long-term, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year corporate bond issuances. You cannot be listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange or take public money without having to comply with the Securities and Exchange Commission's corporate governance code.
Right.
Or the Ghana Stock Exchange's own governance requirements.
Before you go any further, is that a different standard of company behavior to our run-of-the-mill stuff?
It is a different
unfortunately,
standard.
sometimes KPMG is forced to deal with. Is it a totally different standard?
Ghana Stock Exchange deals with it, and the SEC deals with it as well. It is the global standard. Your chairman must be in place. The board cannot be all your family and friends. They have to be independent people who are there purely to ensure that the company is run to the interest of all its stakeholders, all its communities, be it the taxman, your financiers, your short-term financiers,
right,
or other people who've given you long-term capital. So that is critical. And when Andy talked about our neighbors coming to do business here, you should check the percentage of those companies that are actually listed in their home markets. Almost all the Nigerian banks that are here are listed on the NGX.
So
Nigerian
they're
Stock
satisfying a certain standard.
They've met that standard.
Yeah.
Almost all the
You're not
South
going to talk
African
about the banks
businesses.
right now because you might make him very upset.
Absolutely, Asia, etc.
Right.
Here in Ghana, we have about 40, just about 40 companies listed on our stock markets, on both the equity and the debt side.
Right.
There are several of them that are foreign companies as well. There is time now for a lot of our Ghanaian businesses to come and list, raise equity, raise long-term debt capital, and list on the stock exchange. The pride of every Nigerian business person is to be quoted on their stock market. And I think the continuous work, the education we are doing, should begin to see a few more Ghanaian companies
getting there.
Take advantage
We
of
talk
this.
about digitization, and you're here, and then the focus this year is about the youth. And it's sometimes difficult. The youth are going to be trained to do a job, but the youth are not the job today, or are they? And how beneficial is digitization how is it going to improve, for example, the quality of the companies that are operating in this country? How is that going to...
I mean, companies do not operate in isolation. They are stakeholders. And to be able to continue to attract capital, and perhaps even cheaper capital, like I'm now saying, you want to be able to build confidence in the investor community and in the stakeholder community. And therefore, what digitization affords is the capacity and ability of people within and without the organization to be able to have access to readily available information.
Right.
Okay, that would help, build that trust and confidence in what they do.
It'll make the company more honest as well, won't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think one of the topics that will be discussed at this conference has to do with something called environment, social governance, ESG agenda. And it's at the heart of what is known as sustainable reporting. And in the accounting world, there is a move towards what is also known as integrated reporting. And that is because increasingly, companies need to be more accountable, not just for the financial numbers and the figures, but they also have to be able to demonstrate how they have been able to comply with the global sustainable development goals.
Right.
Be it investing in the community, investing in their people, supporting laudable causes in education, healthcare, water, sanitation, etc. Okay, and of course, complying with good governance standards as well.
Right. And before you go on, I'm going to just chip in. I want you to chip in this as well. How important is that government becomes more creative also in the way it's handling business, to make business more responsive to needs, but also to operate better? What role does government play? Government sets the rules, it sets the laws, etc., etc. Is there something else they should be doing?
Well, I can't speak for the government. I can only speak to what I see going on. And I think clearly one of the initiatives by government to digitalize a number of businesses as well as our business model is very, very laudable. I mean, we talk about the national identification card, and now increasingly becoming a prerequisite for accessing certain social services.
Right.
That is the way government is going to be able to plan effectively,
right,
and to be able to see how it allocates resources even better. And therefore, I would say that we all continue to support those initiatives. Of course, if there are areas to improve, we should be, constructive enough to make those inputs. But by and large, we cannot do otherwise because
Right.
we are in a global village.
Right. You're going to have to educate me. You know, you've talked about the pride of the Nigerian to have his company quoted on the stock exchange, etc., etc. Are you telling me that Ghana doesn't have that kind of pride in its businesses, or the business owners don't have that kind of pride, or they're just so unwilling to grow and modernize because the bad habits allow them to do naughty things?
I wouldn't put it wholesale like
don't
that
worry.
for
I'm
sure.
saying it for you.
I think we have reached out to lots of businesses, lots of Ghanaian businesses. Many of them had some misconceptions about what it took to list on the Ghana Stock Exchange. We have actually made the process as simple as possible, and we have entered into MOUs with various associations like the Association of Ghana Industries, Stanford Seed Transformation Network, all of whom bring together some of the cream of the crop of Ghanaian businesses, and we're engaging with them. We are having them also speak to some of the companies that are already listed and explain what their experience has been. Many have been afraid of opening up to other shareholders.
Exactly.
Because the point of being accountable, they see as a very difficult matter.
I want both of you, please. Is it because they don't want to account to shareholders, or because it's just because they don't have that habit of having shareholder engagement, and it's like, I'm the owner of this business, it's mine, and
it's one more thing to manage. They are managing their suppliers, they are managing their employees, bring people, they don't know them, they don't think they can talk to, but there are all sorts of tools to help you manage that process better. And in fact, when you look at the companies that are 100-year-old, they are all public companies. Sometimes they are founder. Bill Gates, for instance, owns what percentage of Microsoft? Is it 10% or less? All the rest of the stake in Microsoft is with other partners who have only ensured that the business has been run to survive after the original founders.
Right.
And there are tools in place and strategies in place to manage this critical stakeholder engagement, just as you manage your GRA, Ghana Revenue Authority relationships, your suppliers, your staff. There's also that in place. I think the benefits of having other people in your company giving you equity capital, giving you mezzanine capital, giving you long-term debt capital outweighs any cost or any problems of managing
or
that
mistrust
stakeholder.
or reluctance to share your business.
And you can be 100% shareholder of 10,
Right.
something worth 10 cedis, or you can be a 10% shareholder of something worth 100 million cedis. And that for us is we are talking about after today.
Right.
We're talking about moving beyond. I've built something that is enough to take care of myself and my family and maybe my grandchildren, to being champions that create businesses that can hire our hundreds of thousands of youth that don't know what to do with their lives because there aren't job opportunities.
So that's a long-term benefit.
That is the long-term benefit.
You have a business that is going to last beyond the founder.
A business that just takes care of you and your retirement and your children, and maybe your grandchildren doesn't cut it anymore.
Right.
Our business industry will be wiped out if we continue to do that.
Right.
So our aim is to have companies that can hire 10,000 people, 50,000 people, supply chains that can do that. And that is what we are calling on today's entrepreneurs to take advantage of. There is money available on the Ghana Stock Exchange. That is no longer the problem.
Right.
There is money domestically, there's money from international portfolio investors who are looking for opportunities like that. And we are asking private companies and even the government. The government owns 100 companies, has stakes in 100 companies. Yeah. And when they need money, they keep going back to government.
Why not?
The stock exchange is there for them to take advantage of that.
Andy, you've had to do the ones that didn't do their work properly, didn't run a proper structure. They crumble for a variety of reasons. They're lost to us forever and ever. Are you at all seeing any improvement? Or if there must be an improvement, where must that improvement come? What have you seen as being some of the clear bad habits that are repeated with companies that have failed in this country?
I think the unwillingness to accept change.
Simple.
Yes, because, you know, just like a product life cycle, a business also goes through a certain life cycle. And to think that the same business model or the practices that you started the enterprise with will still be valid, you know, in the next 5, 10, 15 years, is not going to take you anywhere. You know, you need to be able to respond to your environment to attract patient capital. You know, even if you feel you are self-sufficient, you need to attract capital in the form of intellectual capital. I mean, people who have had experience in the system, dealing with regulators, dealing with bankers, dealing with financial institutions, to be able to continue to guide your enterprise, you know, to grow. And any business that does not grow obviously gets, you know, mulled over by the competition. And I would want to see a situation where our business entrepreneurs and captains are bold enough to embrace the change that will introduce, you know, technology, that will introduce good governance practices, that will introduce transparency and accountability and good corporate practices, especially where their employees are concerned. So, for example, I just picked it up over the weekend that the finance minister at a recent program did signal that government's recruitment capacity has been exhausted. And therefore, we should begin to look at the private sector. If we're going to grow the private sector, we need to be able to open ourselves to what is happening around us. And I feel that if businesses are going to be able to embrace those changes, then they can grow from strength to strength and build our economy for us.
Is there a role for the government, though, in assisting beyond simply, we always use the phrase, create an enabling environment. What does that mean? I mean, simply telling me that you're capped, you can no longer recruit within the public sector, what does that mean? It just says you can't do that, but does it help? Does it make me more creative because you can't recruit? What is government supposed to do to add on to make sure that the private sector can do all of the things you want them to do, be responsive, be long-term in thought processes, but also be a viable business? What does government have to do? Does it have to do anything except simply say, here, go?
And government is an important stakeholder, without a doubt. And they facilitate all the licenses, the permissions, you know, the regulatory regime that would ensure that participants in the market, you know, play fair and square, and are able to return value to their stakeholders. And therefore, when we talk about government's role, is building infrastructure, not just fiscal infrastructure, but also, you know, the logical infrastructure, the regulation, and everything that all these businesses can thrive on. So you see some changes gradually taking root in the system. We've passed a new Companies Act. We have, you know, the Office of the Registrar of Companies being modernized and being digitalized.
Right.
All these are government initiatives to fast track, you know, businesses that want to, you know, hit the ground running. Right. I mean, if you want an office space, beyond the office space, you need access to very good energy, very good human capital and all that.
Right.
And all these government can play an effective role in bringing this thing about.
Right. Cost of doing business, Abna, before I let you guys go, they've called you in. The cost of doing business in Ghana is always complained about. It's complained about by locals as much as it's complained about by people who are even coming to the country. What's happening there? What has to be done I mean, even with these kinds of discussions, what are you, people like yourselves, what are you saying?
Yeah. So one of the key ones is the cost of capital. The cost of financing in Ghana compared to our neighbors is relatively high. So one of the areas is government's own borrowing, one in terms of the volume, and then the price at which government borrows at. So the overall economic management, the overall environment has to be such that the cost of capital itself is managed and it's affordable. That's one of the areas. Another area, if we're going to get private companies to get in, is government's own spending and procurement habits. So if I've set up a factory, is government buying from me, or are we still importing everything that we need? So we've talked also about even real estate, the cost of real estate, the cost of utilities. These are all real challenges, and thankfully we're seeing work being done around what the electricity prices, for instance, to business users. So these are all things we must work on, and sometimes bottlenecking them requires access to capital,
right,
to fix the issue. So I think once some of these things are put in place, and if especially we can manage, because if government is borrowing the 5-year bond from government is at 18%, 19%, then private sector person, and that's the risk-free rate, the private sector person can only borrow on top of that.
Right.
Your colleague Cote d'Ivoire next door is operating at single-digit interest rates for the same produce. Right. So how are we going to compete? How are we going to win at AFTA?
Does government take a leap of faith, Andy? Does the government take a leap of faith and somehow almost literally subvent the cost of borrowing by sort of taking the hit that the banks would take and saying, okay, just lend at 10%. The difference on top, we will take it. I mean, is that how? Do you know what I mean? I want to know what's the possible. How does government get to be a fair lender or encourage fair lending in the marketplace?
Well, by playing a facilitating role. And the whole business of lending is about risk and credit, and the more there is information about who-be borrowers, I think the cost of capital can also be adjusted, correspondingly. Abna will be aware that I've been part of conversations to introduce what is known as a domestic credit rating agency in Ghana.
Right, okay.
Because all borrowings typically are influenced by what the rating agencies will put out regarding the risk of the borrower. And therefore, if we can reduce the information asymmetry, and get more transparency and access to information about will-be borrowers, I believe the government will then be on its way to facilitating a process that will make it easier for lenders as well, and therefore to reduce the cost of capital.
Right. Okay. I'm going to have to let you go, but thank you so much for your time. Very quickly before you go, though, one expectation. I mean, the forum is not going to give you change, but a forum will say certain things or be going in a certain direction. What do you want to hear from this forum today and the next day and a half or so?
I'll give you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead and I'll end with...
No, I think it's good to, talk about a number of the matters that are of importance to the market, but beyond that, it's execution and implementation. That there are effective linkages and a handshake with the outcomes from these conferences into policy making and initiatives, so that we can begin to reap the benefits of these conferences. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, similar. I expect the discussions here, for instance, to drive policy and government action. For instance, we're talking about digitalization. I don't remember the last time there was an auction for, we've gone to 5G, right? And for more bandwidth for people to take advantage of all the things we are doing in the digital space. Government can run the next auction and raise capital, right, as we've seen them do before. So that things like this are critical if we're going to take advantage of all the things we want to do. I expect some of the discussions today to take a view on where we are going with our interest rates. I know inflation is ticking up a little, but overall I think interest rates still remain high. It's difficult for government to say we are taking over. Banks borrow at 10%
right,
or lend at 10%. They can't do that. But the one thing we can do, which I've seen in the Ghana Cares program, is a little bit of a guarantee to subsidize some of the commercial corporate bond rates or commercial lending rates that companies are looking for. But importantly, at the end of this conference, I think the private sector should be energized to say that we will access the capital to invest in businesses that can hire our teeming masses.
Okay.
So that the impending social problem of not engaging our youth productively is averted.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, both
Thank
of you.
you.
It's been great talking to you and for the education, and we shall continue the discussions. But have a great forum and enjoy the discussions. Thank you very much. And Yokoto is from KPMG, and it's good to have him here to get some education on where he sits. He's having to deal with the chap. When it all fails, he has to deal with it. And Abna Amwa is the Deputy Managing Director of Ghana Stock Exchange. I've been talking from their perspectives about what they come to this kind of conference for. We're talking to other people as well, obviously, but in the meantime, we take a quick break, commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk some more. Bit of the economic spectrum. Now, we're fortunate now to be able to speak to Fidelity Bank. We've got the transformation chappie here, and he's responsible. He's the Chief Transformation Officer, Fidelity Bank, and that's in the person of Kwesi Champong. And he's been joined by Anthony Sapong, Senior Partner of KPMG. Right, so welcome and thank you both for being here this morning.
Thank you very much.
I've asked everybody, I mean, you come to this kind of event, and we have these events all the time. So the first question is always going to be, well, do we get anything from these events? You come to another forum, another conference. Do you get anything? Is there a takeaway that you normally get? Or are you just hoping something will be different this time? What is it? Why does KPMG come here?
Yeah. Thank you very much. KPMG, as a professional services firm, works in communities that we operate, and therefore it's important to participate in programs and activities that really support the communities. That also drives our work. Now, if you look back over the past 10 years of Ghana Economic Forum, you will notice that various ideas and discussions come to the fore, and some of these have shaped the agenda of government policy over time. And I think it's important to note some of these areas, particularly if you look at the area of infrastructure financing, which led to the establishment of Ghana Infrastructure Fund, was one of those bold ideas. The development bank that the government is pursuing currently is also one of those ideas that came through, because these are important ingredients that go to support the productive or the fundamental sections of
so government listens.
Indeed.
Government listens.
Government listens over time. It can be proven that government listens.
Okay. Fidelity Bank.
Thank you. Good morning. From my perspective, just to introduce Fidelity, it's a Ghanaian-owned bank. It turned 15 about 2 weeks ago, 15 years. And I think given the trajectory we've been on in the last 15 years, we're a very innovative bank. We've actually stood up a transformation office. And the idea now is to look at the whole digital transformation. And today, my expectations is, given where we are, we have a very young population. We have the headwinds of transformation. COVID was a force in function, which allowed us to look at how we can leapfrog in terms of transformation. So from today's session, it would be great to start hearing how we can look at the CBDC, how we can deploy technology to drive innovation across the country.
Right. Those kinds of things. You want to hear it and you want to talk about it.
That's correct.
Okay. KPMG. And unfortunately for you, you're also witnesses to the challenges that businesses in this country face and the failures of businesses in this country. Unfortunately. Digitization, what sort of impact is it going to have? Would it possibly, even if we get it right, would it improve the chances of businesses standing up and staying stood up and not failing? Will digitization do that? Can it do that?
Yes. Digitization actually is one of the moving force globally and also in Africa and Ghana. And therefore, if you look at how digitization is being used to drive individual agenda, family agenda, and business and government agenda, if you sit back and you lay back, then you're going to really get behind and you won't get the benefit of it. So if I start with government, for example, with the drive of digitization, what does it mean for the entire economy? I think we are beginning to see that digitization is moving to the ends where it actually benefits the entire economy. If you take GRA, for example, currently they are driving digitization agenda that makes it easier for taxpayers to sit behind their desks in their offices and make their payment. Previously, you could then have to be in a long traffic to make payment. Secondly, if you look at the ports, the way digitization is driving, it's only a matter of time that data can then be harnessed for government to be able to look at how much volumes of imports come to this country, how much drives revenue, and be able to use that to eventually get insights and predict taxpayers' revenue, which today is one of the challenges that we face.
Right. So,
if you come to businesses, one cannot underestimate that, because today people are not looking for just brick and mortar. People are looking for the ways and means to make things convenient for them, for their customers. And therefore, digitization provides the avenue to be able to do that. And this particularly has been heightened by the COVID-19 pandemic, where if you were not digitized or didn't have technology, your business couldn't have been resilient to be able to carry on in that respect.
All right, banking. Obviously, you, to a certain extent, you're already on that path yourselves as an individual banks. But the country, if the country is not with you, you can be as digitized as you like. You still have to provide services in the format that the customer would get to use. Your thoughts on what Mr. Sapong said?
Thank you for that. I think if I look at it from a government point of view, there's a government.gov platform which looks at the whole idea of the postal address. It looks at the ID system, the Ghana ID system. Once we start to push hard on those agenda items, we start to get to include the unbanked and the underbanked in that environment. Now, from the underbanked, it's people who have bank accounts but cannot access or leverage the services of the bank. We're seeing that there are products and services that we can give them through digitization. If you look at the unbanked, it's a case of how do you get access to people who live at the bottom of the pyramid? What services and products can you give them where we can give them access to loans, microloans, micro-pensions? And we're seeing that in Fidelity, that there's a big push on that case. And I think digitization will help that.
Yeah, see, but Fidelity, you see, you're not the only bank. The problem is you may be doing the right thing, and then so many of your colleague banks are not. There are certain ones that are fairly modern in their thinking, others are not. What's going to, from your perspective again, what's going to have to happen? Is the government going to have to be involved in addressing the banks even, to step up the way they expand their processes to make them more accessible to customers and clients? What's going to have to happen?
So I think there are a number of actors around the table. So you've got the regulatory bank,
right,
which is the Bank of Ghana. You've got the banks, you've got the fintechs, and you've got the telcos. There's going to be a lot more of active collaboration between these various parties.
Right.
I think from Fidelity, we already do some partnerships with MTN. We have Yellow Loan as a product. We intend to work with the regulator in the sandbox to do more work, to test ideas in a closed loop form where we can bring products to market a lot quicker. So I think the collaboration is going to be key, the partnership is going to be key, and it's more of a case of how do you ensure that we stick together and fight the common goal of digitizing the country and improving the lives of the customer.
Right. Mr. Sapong, you heard. See, with the challenges come room also for people to get it very badly wrong and then fail again. That's where you sit.
Yeah.
Having to do with not just a failure, but just bad structure, bad management, bad governance, and everything else that goes with it. Are you even looking at making sure that as these collaborations come together, as Fidelity would work with the service provider, that their habits are informed by what is corporate good governance?
Thank you. So it's important that corporate governance sits at the heart of every business. And as you rightly said, even in the banking sector, you still need to collaborate with other businesses as well as the regulator. And corporate governance is not just the structures of your board and processes, but also what we call the conduct of business. Now, the conduct of business requires that you have a cultural system that looks at doing the right things, getting the right people in place at all times, and taking the interests of your stakeholders into account. And these days, we are even moving it further into what we call the ESG, economic, environmental, social, and governance structures. Right. Not just the stakeholder, but also the environment. How does your business conduct protect the environment for the current generation and then for the future? And therefore, for businesses to survive, they have to have the mindset of sustainability. And you sustain that by implying in your culture, purposefully making sure that you have value-driven culture that sustain the business today and tomorrow. Fair dealing with your stakeholders, and particularly also these days, your employees. Because the employees are the people that will carry the business agenda from one step to the other. And therefore, if you don't pay attention to their well-being, you don't pay attention to fair treatment, then you are setting yourself to fail. And these are some of the things we believe from KPMG businesses must take account of if they are to sustain and to rise above failures that others have seen.
Fidelity celebrates how many years now?
15 years.
15 years. As a Ghanaian-owned bank.
Indigenous bank. Yeah.
And you look for sustainability. You look for me to be able to, in my dotage, so the Fidelity is still there. Oh, this business is still there. This business is still there. But you know this country. Fidelity may stand, but if Fidelity started with 20 other businesses, at least 15 of those businesses will not be here in 15 years' time. I'm being doomsaying right now, but you know what I mean. We don't seem to have good habits. Will this digitization, these processes, this improvement of governance, will it help that? Will it make them more stable? Or is there something else that we need to do to grow business in this country?
Okay. So as I said already, you businesses sustain, which is a combination of several factors. So some of the things that you've mentioned in terms of the digitization processes, they do help. But at the end of the day, it is human beings that carry businesses from one level to the other. And therefore, in order to have that sustainability, as we said, from governance perspective, you need people who are giving the right tone at the top, that this is what the business is set for, and we must aim to do the right things at all times. You must operate within your capacity and tolerable limits in a way that you don't go beyond what we call punching above your weight. Secondly, your human capital resources is critical. You can have all the digitization you want, but if you don't have the people with the right mindset and culture that supports management and your board to deliver on the strategic objective of the business, then of course you also are going to hit rock bottom. Then of course, as I tell you, your stakeholders. In a banking, your customers are important. And today, for example, customers are asking for convenience. Customers are asking for products that have been tailored to their needs. And customers are asking for affordability. The question is, how do you balance these needs and also ensure that you keep your customers in the midst of competitive environment? So these matters, you can see that revolves around the people are the ones that ultimately drives great businesses from one level to the other. Right. And businesses should not take them for granted.
Right. It would be unfair to ask the Chief Transformation Officer of Fidelity why banks are so annoying sometimes, so I won't do that. But let me just talk about the threats that are even the idea of digitization. Some of the very threats that we are now facing, because as we grow in our computerization and our knowledge and the linking of systems, you're talking about yellow loans and all these things. These same things, they come with added opportunities for criminals to get involved. What sort of threats and challenges are we facing, even purely from that area?
Yeah, it's a good point, right? I think now if you think about this, cybercrime as a service, which is scary, which is where you have a community which is set up, malware, hackers, and developers who use tools and other actors to go on the dark web and basically sort of like make money out of the new technologies that come in. Now, if you think about cybersecurity as a topic, it's very hot at the moment. I think Ghana had a Cybersecurity Act in December 2020. Right. So it was centered by the president. It's a step in the right direction. However, I think there are three parts to getting the framework around cybersecurity. There are the users, or the people, of which that seems to be the weakest link. Because what you have is you have the users who are not fully aware of how they have to protect themselves from these actors. You have employees who, by accident or intent, end up colluding with some of these guys to sort of like rip people off. Then you have the third-party providers, which happen to be the agents. They need constant training to understand that you can't put people's data out there. That's a key part. Then when you get to the processes, which is very important as well, it's all about legal frameworks, training, policies. So in Fidelity, we have use cases which get sent out periodically where people get trained. We have a chief security officer who stood up an organization to address these threats. But then those things are important, but it's the constant need to train, the constant need to get people to be aware, because these guys they're not sleeping. They're still changing.
So the banking sector specifically has just got to be as on top of the game.
Yeah, the last piece is about technology.
Right.
And everybody thinks once you have technology, it's a lot safer. It isn't, because you have to now design with security in mind. Anytime you actually put your network settings out there, you've got to make sure you get the regular updates. And it's so important
and
that
don't use 1, 2, 3 as your password.
No, ABC 1, 2, 3, which you see a lot of people still do, which is a hacker's wet dream, yeah? So if you think of these three components as a framework, it's so important that we get it right. I think in 2018, there was a study that was done with Kenya, which is M-Pesa.
M-Pesa, yeah.
Which happens to be one of the first mobile money frameworks, which was very successful. The cost in 2018 was 300 million. The direct cost was about a third of that. The indirect cost was about 2/3. Now, the indirect cost is more about your brand, weakness in the market, people don't feel comfortable using the applications or the tools. So there's a need for the banks to step up, the telcos to step up, and also the regulators to step up as well.
Yes, so there's work to be done there.
There's a lot more work to be done on that one.
Okay. Again, you're the front end of having to do with the mess when it comes. And the banks always tell us that they've made no losses. And we know that somebody has stolen half of their money. But
you will take a session to that, right?
I will.
No, but of course, nobody's going to go and go out there and admit that when there have been losses. But how dangerous is the problem? What are you seeing from where you sit as well? That, not banks collapsing because of it, but seriously being undermined by these kinds of threats.
Yeah, certainly, as Kwesi said, technology and digitization present great opportunities for businesses to transform, to create efficiencies, and make it easier to reach their stakeholders, customers, suppliers, and all others. But as with every human institution, for everything good, you realize that others also will look at it from the negative point of view. So in as much as there are people who are driving technology for enhancement and for the good of all, there are all those who are always constantly working 24 hours to look at how can they look at vulnerabilities and take advantage of it. And therefore, when we talk about technology and digitization, it's not always the investment of what brings the efficiency, also the investment of what protects you, which is the controls and cybersecurity protections that you have.
And the training that he's talking about.
Regularly, as you make the investment, you must also invest in how do I identify the gaps and seal them. Today, we have what we call the professional hackers. Their job is to come to your business and look at whether they could find loopholes that people can take advantage of. So you proactively go for these services, identify your loopholes, and seal them before the bad guys get you. If you do that, you constantly be ahead of the bad guys. and therefore you minimize the risks they come into in a big time.
Okay, I'm going to have to let you run and get into the conference, and we've run out of time, gentlemen. So, but before you go, very, very quickly, you know, you come to the event, like you said, there's been impact from these discussions. One thing you want to hear from this, where the address is to the youth and digitization. What's one thing you want to see or hear coming away from this event?
So I think it's important that when we look at the economy belongs to the future generation,
right?
Not for the aged. And therefore the youth must always look at the positive side of things. In life, you always have difficulties and challenges. But if you pay attention to the positive or the opportunities, and you drive yourself to take advantage of opportunities, with time, you are able to get into it. And therefore, how can the youth take advantage of some of the opportunities on the market? And I think the COVID-19 itself has brought several needs to the floor.
Right.
And therefore, if you look for some of these needs and you drive yourself to fill some of these niches, it's one way that you build a better future.
So it becomes an opportunity and something can jump into. And Kwesi, your thoughts?
So my thoughts are very simple. I think we have a very young population. Average age median is about 26. We have a great weather. We have a great country. There's a lot more we can do with this country. I think the younger generation needs to take the opportunity to constantly learn, retool a lot quicker, because the world that we live in is all about constant learning. It'd be great to get people to start thinking about how to solve problems. There's no other industry that you don't put the word tech after it that doesn't have any opportunities in here. So for the youth, it's more about how do they ensure that these opportunities work for them. But then I think the government also has to ensure that we open up these opportunities for the youth as well.
So that's what you expect from the government, that the government recognizes where the opportunity is and then makes it available and accessible as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of the discussions this morning. Sorry to have kept you from the discussions inside. Kwesi Champong is the Chief Transformation Officer, Fidelity Bank, and Anthony Sapong is the Senior Partner, KPMG. I must say Pete Marwick, just because I used to in my youth say Pete Marwick.
Yeah, that's the old name that has been transformed.
Yeah. So gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you. And have a great conference and enjoy the discussions.
Thank you very
much.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. Boss, thank you very much. Asasi Radio 99.5. So that's how we end our discussions from, where are we? Kempinski. Near the UN Information Center, FAO, near National Theatre. Going back to the studio and calling it a day. Bye-bye.
Integrity is what we believe in. Constructive journalism is the tone of our profession. And we speak as the voice of our land. So when the drums of creativity sound,